The Twin Flames universe absolutely exploded last year when Netflix and Amazon Prime released documentaries exposing this modern day cult of love. I was so fascinated by this crazy story that I may or may not have joined the Twin Flames universe private Facebook group to investigate myself. If you're just coming across this channel, I'm Kendra and I cover cults, crime, and crooked culture in a little bit of an unconventional way. Roasting the terrible people at the top comes with the territory. Of course, Twin Flames universe was no exception, and last month I released my own deep dive exposing the cult leaders of love. The evidence was incredibly compelling, but I really wanted to talk to somebody with personal experience. I invited Lia to share her story as a former member of the Twin Flames universe. So buckle up, because today you'll hear her shocking story for the very first time.
You're saying what me and I'm sure so many other people who ended up leaving the group were thinking once we finally got out of that like mind meld, weird, mind warp, brainwash type energy that they were doing on us. Like once you're out, it's like all of the thoughts that everything you want to say to people like that, and it feels like you can't say it because they're gonna try to come after you or they'll threaten you or all this stuff. But it's so cathartic to hear somebody else be like, "Yeah, no, these people are insane," and
Truly.
yeah, and these people need to be stopped. And so it was cathartic. Once you get to a point where you can laugh about all this like heavy stuff and all this the trauma behind it, it's a really nice feeling. Honestly,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the thing about these types of stories is they are so heavy and constantly, and when you're either hearing other people's stories, having gone through something yourself, it's heavy, and then even just from the outside, like listening to other people's experiences can be heavy. So I thoroughly enjoy being able to, and I think it's important to sometimes bring some levity to the really heavy stories that we talk about, and roasting them and calling them great value Jesus is a good way to do it.
That's exactly what it is. Great value Jesus. He's Jesus from Wish.
Seriously. Timu Jesus.
Yes. Timu Jesus. It is what he is. A line you see in all the European pictures, and you're like, oh, nah, that's what that is.
Right. Like white, long haired,
Yeah.
skinny with facial hair Jesus. But he's somehow greasier and sleazier. But anyway, can you explain to me what a twin flame is? Before we get into all of the details of the cult itself,
Okay.
we know that you joined or you became part of the Twin Flames universe, but what is a twin flame?
Okay. So, um, nowadays I've kind of delved into what the term kind of meant. Um, the more the more I delve into it, the more I realize it was a lot of stuff that was taken from other cultures. From Hinduism in particular, they talk about twin flames completely differently, and I was just really, really confused as to how it got to be, how the cult got to be what it is now. But essentially, um, when I joined, I didn't know much about it, but I heard that it was um, supposed to be like your soulmate, your other half, your um, this perfect person. Basically, it's like it's the one. It's the one that everybody's supposedly supposed to be looking for. It is, the it's every single romance movie where there's these two people that are perfect for each other. They felt like they met in other lives or stuff like that,
Right.
and met
Yeah.
in the past life, and now they're the one for me. Essentially, that's what the idea of twin flames was, and it up until the group, I had never heard about that. But you always hear people talk about soulmates. Essentially, it's like your twin flame is your perfect soulmate, like a super soulmate, and the only one that you'll ever need in the world, essentially.
It's a soulmate on steroids.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, what initially drew you to the group? And then to kind of piggyback off of that, tell us a little bit about the founders of Twin Flames universe. So, who those people are, and then what kind of drew you initially to this group?
What drew me in was actually hearing other people talk about it. uh, I didn't know much about the founders at first, but the people that I followed were tarot readers and uh, spiritualists or people,
Mhm.
spiritual community, and they were talking about this group, and supposedly this is how you find your twin flame, and this is how you find that perfect soulmate that you're looking for. And
And who
so,
doesn't want that?
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's it's very typical. It's like something that we're kind of almost programmed into wanting to be with this
Mhm.
perfect person, or maybe you just, or maybe, or for me personally, I had just broken up um, at the end of 2018, and I just wanted to feel confident, and so that's what kind of led me to look for
Makes
love in a
sense.
way. But then um, I kind of found the founders of it, Jeff and Shalia, through their YouTube. There were a lot of, by then they had a bunch of YouTube videos, and I think they were just, maybe not just starting with the Facebook group, but they're just starting to get a lot of people involved in that, and more people were starting to talk about it. And I'm like, this is maybe
Yeah.
some legitimacy to this, because people keep talking about it. Like literally, it was every single video I would see with pick a cards or tarot readings, and it was like twin flame this and twin flame that. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, maybe I should look into this.
Yeah. It was like you kept seeing signs and, like, confirmation that you should go that direction. It makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. And then that's the thing about the spiritual community. There's a very big
Mhm.
emphasis on signs and synchronicities and things like that. And there's a phenomenon. I forgot the word, but there's a phenomenon for that, where you keep seeing signs and things like that and thinking that it's meant to be. When I mean, sometimes it can be just coincidence, but in this case with the whole twin flame thing, I didn't think it was back then. I didn't, and I'm like, okay, so maybe there's a reason I'm seeing all this over and over again, and also there's a reason why the it wasn't just random tarot readers I was going to either. These were people that, at first, people that I trusted, people that
Mm.
I had personal readings with as well. And we had been discussing a lot of trauma that I'd gone through and was trying to heal from as well. And so they were, having them vouch
Yeah.
for Jeff and Shalia was like, okay,
Right. It
maybe,
adds some legitimacy to it.
yeah. Um, but that's ultimately what said, okay, that's what ultimately what made me say, okay, you know what, let me at least check out this Facebook group. And they were quite welcoming at first, and I think that's what drew me in as well right away. There's the minute you join, it's like they're like, what's your name, and welcome, and come on in, and we'll help you on your twin flame journey. And not just the founders, but like everybody in the group was all of a sudden just love bombing me, and friending me, and it seemed uh, it seemed nice at first. It's felt very communal.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody's looking for an online community that they feel safe in, that they feel
Mhm.
welcomed in. And so the fact that for the first time I kind of felt this online was I mean, it didn't set off alarms at first. I didn't realize back then, I didn't know what love bombing was either. And so now that I see how quickly they were able to draw me in with all of this, come on in, we're gonna help you out, all of this, but seemed positive at first. Now I look back, I'm like, oh, it happened
Right.
extremely fast, and
Yeah,
it
they
was,
pounced on you.
yeah, that's exactly um what they do for new people in the group. It's like, but now I realize it's like they see new blood, they see new blood in the water. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Very, very sinister, honestly.
Yeah, so their Facebook group, like I mentioned this to you the other day, but I infiltrated their Facebook group, when I started researching them, like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 months ago, whenever it was.
Mhm.
And I'm still part of that Facebook group, and they are very, very active, like, the whole group is, not just Jeff and Shalia, but like you said, it gives off the appearance of, like, this very welcoming community, and everyone's in it to help you and to help you find your twin flame and give you all of these avenues to get to that point. But there are those like undercover layers of love bombing, and then of course, ultimately, they push you towards purchasing things to help you find your twin flame.
They will try to assign, in my case, they ended up assigning me a coach right away as well. And the coach, essentially, they're, quote unquote, ascended coaches that are basically the ones who work underneath the founders, underneath Jeff and Jelia. It's like they, the sooner they can assign you somebody who can kind of be like your your kind of guide for the group,
Right. Yeah.
but also they are like henchmen.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like they want someone to keep tabs on you.
Yeah, the coach I was assigned to in particular was one that was not just trying to get me to sign up for different things, encouraging me to sign up for their so-called ascension classes. She was also getting me to sign up for her own coaching as well, of course. But then
Mm.
she, in addition to that, God, the mirror exercise, in addition
Oh, yeah, we have to talk about that in a minute.
before the mirror exercise, she would teach me to do this weird meditation where it was almost teaching me complacency. It was like
Hmm.
I would tell her something that was bothering me, and it would be anything from something I didn't like about my home life, or something that like a larger like social issue, or something like that,
Yeah.
like even social justice. At one point, became a topic I was talking about with her, and then she would be like, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go within," which meant go into like a meditative state. She would tell me to close my eyes, to go within, and then repeat after me. You're going to say, I'm doing everything that I can do in this situation right now. I'm doing everything that I need to do. I don't, like, and like, I don't need to do
Right.
anything else, essentially. And I'm like, um,
But we do need to do things,
yeah.
though.
I'm like,
That's the problem.
yeah, I'm like, this meditation is supposed to be helpful, yeah, but it's like, but how does that solve anything? And I was just very confused at first. I'm like, I it's like, are you trying to teach me to be more calm, to not have anxiety, or are
Right.
you trying to teach me that I don't need to get involved in anything at
Mm,
all and make any
interesting.
changes? Like
Yeah.
yeah, it just that
Like, don't rock the boat.
yeah, very much don't rock the boat. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Don't make waves. It was that type of energy. And then that's when stuff like the mirror exercise would come into play. But anytime, and they did this with a lot of people in the group. Anytime somebody would show a concern or something like that, they would tell them to just go within, and it just kind of essentially, yeah, just the more complacent you were and the less questions you asked, the better for everybody, essentially.
Mhm.
And if it still wasn't enough, sometimes that's when I would see Jeff or Megan or Shelia get involved, and then it would start to sound like they were belittling them because they were
Yeah.
essentially questioning authority. you know um Even when you were questioning the authority of the coaches, they were the ones who knew best. They were the ones who knew, um who knew best for you, and they were trying to help you, but you had to help yourself by just listening along. And
Right. Or you're out of alignment if you're questioning too much.
exactly. Or if you're questioning and you're not receptive to it, that's a block. you know
Oh, yes, that's a good one. They do say that all the time. I forgot about that one. Oh, that's just a block. Or still, because I haven't left that Facebook group because I'm a nosy bitch. And I just feel like the drama isn't over with these people, so I just like to keep tabs. I'm gonna be honest.
no,
Anyway, that's one thing I see in there. Probably the number one thing is the mirror exercise, and then maybe number three is map, which we'll get to. But the other like thing that's always just in the freaking group and like every other post is blocks. It's either people saying how to get rid of these blocks, or it's people posing questions like, "Hey, my twin flame cheated on me, blah blah blah, and I felt some kind of way about it. Is that just me having a block? Like, it's that type of stuff the whole time. It's just internalizing and self blame all the time, which
Yeah.
is a result of a lot of this mirror exercise work that promotes that. So, can you explain what the mirror exercise is and how it's used within the group?
So it was supposed to be, I'm sure whoever invented the mirror exercise, it's, I guarantee it's something else that they stole from some type of psychology or what have you,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to be self-reflective, um, helping you kind of see your own faults and things that you do. But it, they took it, of course, and warped it into something that just fosters more complacency. Honestly, it just makes it so that you're constantly blaming yourself for everything that is wrong in your life. Um,
Can you give me an example? Like,
yeah.
walk me through a mirror, what a mirror exercise would look like.
Um, Let me use myself as an example with this. What I used to do was, once they taught it to me, I would be sitting alone in a park trying to quote unquote manifest my twin flame or try to find alignment. And I would be sitting there and going, okay, so I was, you know, I was made fun of today by one of my coworkers because I didn't do something right. You know, and I would say, okay, this person made fun of me. And then I would switch out the this person for myself. So I would say, I would put myself into that situation and say that I was making fun of myself. So basically, you take, say, if I have a sentence like, Peter made fun of me, I would take Peter out and replace that with a pronoun for myself. So I made fun of me. I was making fun of myself
Mm,
because the mirror exercise is basically teaching you that everyone in the world is essentially um, reflecting each other. And so if you are experiencing any adversity, if you're experiencing any, issues with other people in your life, essentially it is you doing it to yourself
right.
in a way. And so that's something that you need to fix instead of, and of course, something like that, there was no limits to it. So eventually I went from, oh, my coworkers making fun of me, to it became, eventually I was blaming myself for my own childhood trauma.
Hmm.
My
That's
parents,
dangerous.
yeah, it was like my parents didn't, you know, abuse me. I was abusing myself, and it's like, wait, and something that's kind of when I started to notice saying that to myself just didn't feel right at all. I had a
Yeah.
really strange feeling in my gut, but then every time I would, go back to my coach and say this feels uncomfortable, she would be like, okay, that's a block. This is a block. Let's work through this. And I'm like,
First of all, I just want to compliment you when you impersonate her. It's freaking hilarious to me. Your voice is like spot on. I don't know this person, but like that community, even if like on TikTok, those exact types of people, that's the voice,
yeah,
the voice. I think it's
it's
hilarious. It's
it's
so good.
it's like I was telling you, it's like you're speaking to pod people, is what it feels like.
Yes,
Very
yes.
much so. That's how
Perfect
deeply
description.
it just, I don't, it's just it very much feels like you can see how deeply um mind work they are, just how crazy the indoctrination truly is when you just start
Yeah.
hearing them all sound the same.
Yeah. Little
Eh,
robots.
Very much so.
All of us should take responsibility for things in our life that are our own doing.
Yeah.
But it's a very slippery slope when we start taking on everyone else's wrongdoings.
This is how they create people that they can manipulate. The
Hmm.
more they teach you to go against your intuition and go against your gut and go against, what you feel are red flags, the more they try to push that out of you, the easier it is for you to be manipulated and controlled by them. It's probably the most frustrating part about excuse me, the most frustrating part about the whole um, spiritual community, in general is just so much has been warped. So many good things that should be helpful and positive, and then when you get into groups like this, like TFU, it's like they know that this stuff can actually help people. The leaders do, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't care about that. They only care about power and control. That's it. That's all they want. With this whole thing, just power and control. And so instead of healing trauma, instead of finding an actual uh, healthy relationship, you're just adding more trauma for you to
Mm-hmm.
end up having to heal from. You're just you know messing things up further. It's making it so that you end up depending on these people for damn near everything. uh, and
Yeah. Because they're, like you said, they're promising the solution to a problem while adding to the problem. So
yeah,
it's like you come in with pre-existing trauma and pre-existing, like, just, I don't want to say baggage, but like just emotional heaviness or questions or self-doubt or self-confidence issues, things like that. And you're looking for the answers, and there's nothing wrong with looking for the answers and looking how to better yourself. But exactly what you said, they know that, and they take a grain of it and they do something really nasty with it.
what ended up being the final straw for me. But it was, I was months in at this point, and I was thinking that I was going to be finally getting some healing for all the trauma I had. And that's when my coach said, well, math helped me and it will help you as well. I'm like, okay, so what is it? And then she told me, yeah, like she was adamant that it would absolutely be exactly what I was looking for, that it was guaranteed to help me heal from trauma. And so it's called the mind alignment process, and it's like, or mind alignment process or mind alignment program. But essentially, um, it's meant to kind of help you to heal trauma. It's supposed to be some very intense therapy, essentially, but uh, it involves hypnosis. And I fortunately didn't get that far into it where I was being hypnotized, but um, what I did experience was them. The first person, but it was actually before the creator of MAP got involved. The first person I tried to uh, do the kind of, they did a session with me that was sort of like um, a qualifier to see what it is that I needed from MAP,
Mm.
what exactly I needed to heal from. So they wanted to know about my trauma, and the first person I spoke with, um, the red flag right away was, it was during a Zoom call, and she said that it had to be recorded, and she couldn't see my face during the call, and so she immediately ended the call. She's like, "No, no, no, we cannot do this. This must be recorded. We have to see your face. We have to." And I'm like, "Because it's just protocol." And I'm like, "What do you mean protocol? Like, what is going on here?" And so she ended the call, and then I went to my coach. I went back to my coach and said, "What exactly is this process that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Why does it need to be recorded?" And he says, "Well," she says, "it's just protocol. And, please don't let the block stop you from getting this help. Please don't let this stop you from seeking treatment. There was just a camera issue. Go ahead and try it again." And I said, "Okay." And so I went ahead and did another session, or another qualifier. At this time, it was with the creator of MAP, of Mind Alignment. This was with Chrissy. And
Oh, Chrissy.
yeah,
Mm.
her, her. She
Mm.
um, did the same, gave me the same runaround as the first person. I said, "Why does this need to be recorded? Why, um, you know, what exactly is involved with this?" And she kept saying, "It's just protocol. It's just what we do." And I'm like, "What is it that you're doing exactly?" Because I'm hearing hypnosis, and I just felt really uncomfortable. And she says, it just kept reassuring me, "This absolutely will heal your trauma. This is guaranteed to heal your trauma." And
Yeah, they have a 100% back, or not 100% back, a 100% guarantee that this will permanently heal trauma. That's their claim on their website. I'm pulling up their website right now just to look at it again, but
Yeah.
Continue, please.
That, you're right. That's exactly what the website still after
Yeah.
all of this, it still says that it's guaranteed to heal your trauma. And that's what she kept guaranteed, that this absolutely will work. This will heal your trauma. And like, okay.
Will it
So,
though?
yeah. I'm like, so you're asking me to trust you with a lot here. And she said, I it, of course she just kept telling, don't let this block scare you from healing and stuff like that. And so during the qualifier, she asked me to tell me, she asked me to tell her about all of my trauma. And up until that point, I actually had not really gone to a therapist and spoken about any of the childhood trauma I'd gone through. Uh, I I went through abuse of pretty much every kind,
Mm.
physical, sexual, emotional, verbal abuse. Very traumatic childhood. And so I listed everything that I had gone through, or rather, I told her everything I had gone through. And she made a list. She started writing down everything that I had told her. And once again, like speaking to a drone, because she started writing everything down like she was taking a grocery list. And then she started repeating back everything that I had said as if she was taking my fast food order. You know, like, you
Gosh.
were beaten as a kid, you were sexually assaulted as a kid, so you were done this, and then this, and this, and then I'm like, and it's just okay. So here's what we're going to do next, and I'm like, there was no appropriate, you know, reaction to that. It was the react. You would think at the very least you would be showing some type of compassion, some type of emotion that
Right.
you're speaking to another human being, and I didn't
Right.
get that from her at all. And so that's when I just kind of felt something snap in me, and I was like,
Mm.
I can't do this. This feels so wrong. It feels so off.
Mm.
And I just um
Ooh.
yeah, I that was probably the worst part about the whole experience with being in the cult. Um that broke me, essentially.
Yeah.
She
Mm.
convinced me still to try to pay for my first official map session. It was like $100. um but after we hung up, I did not do that session. After those two phone calls, those two so-called qualifiers, that was more than enough. It was like
Yeah.
trauma didn't matter to these people. Not, and they were something. I'm like, I finally started listening to my gut, and I'm like, there's no way in hell these people are qualified to
Yeah.
help. There can't be.
And they're not. That's the thing is you mentioned like how she was reading it off like it was she was taking your order like, okay, we got one order of the childhood trauma, we got two orders of the verbal assault, blah 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 blah. But I did a deep dive on their map website, which for some reason I'm Googling it and it's not coming up. I cannot find it. So I don't know where the map, I can find the Twin Flames universe, but not the map
Mm,
website. But anyway,
yeah,
um, that no one's qualified. Not Chrissy, not like it's she's listed as a doctor. She's listed as PhD under her credentials, which she does have a PhD, but it's in social no, I'm sorry, it's something safety. It's some safety PhD. It has nothing to do with mental health, with trauma. And so obviously, like clearly nothing around this program or anything about their TFU in general is trauma informed.
no, not at all.
Nothing. They have a disclaimer in there I saw under the fine print on their website when I was looking way back or a couple months ago. And it says under there, this is not a replacement for therapy or for seeing your doctor, blah, blah, blah. But I also saw that hasn't always been there.
No,
They had to put that there because someone was suicidal and tried to hurt themselves or did after going through this MAP program. And they don't obviously want to have that liability. So now they put that in there. It's like, oh, well, we never claimed we were therapists or doctors, but they are portraying themselves. They absolutely have everything set up for someone to believe and be led to believe that they are therapists and qualified for this type of trauma therapy.
Exactly. I was suicidal myself when I left. That session
Ooh,
with Chrissy was
really?
like that. Just it. Ugh. I was in a horrible headspace
Mm.
after that, and it was to the point where that my job at the time, I was at my job and I could barely function. During my lunch break, I ended up calling the hotline because I didn't want to go back up there. I didn't want to like. I just couldn't
Yeah.
function.
Oh,
I was a mess. I was a mess, and then it took seeing someone who had left, seeing them on YouTube talk about them leaving. Because the thing is, the person that you mentioned who was suicidal, there was somebody who did end up uh, committing suicide um, after that. And
oh my
the way that
God.
they treated people who left in the group, now that, like, I'm telling you, once you're out of this, like, indoctrinated mindset, that right there should have been a freaking red flag, because the way they treated people who left the group, it was, they were treated like pariah. They
Yeah.
instantly became pariah. They instantly became, these horrible people. And then the way that Jeff and Shelia, or even some of the other members, would talk about them when they left was absolutely vile. And then once the girl who committed suicide, once that happened, it was like we weren't even allowed to speak her name. It's like she just
Oh,
disappeared.
wow.
Yeah, there was,
Really?
yeah, we were not allowed to talk about her at all. People who tried to say, "Oh, I knew her," blah blah blah, and they was like, "No, no, no." It was like the comments were deleted. People were just like forced to not bring her that up at all. So
Wow.
it doesn't surprise me that finally they're trying to cover their asses now after all of that. It doesn't surprise me at all. Um, but
Mm.
I am really fortunate that I was able to connect with people who had left. And um, the first person was Elle. She talked about
And
the,
she was in the documentary, correct? I'm not sure which one. Was it the Amazon Prime, like, was it the Escaping Twin Flames, or
I
there's
believe
the, what was the other one?
I believe it was that one. It was the one from Netflix.
Seeking, Desperately Seeking Soulmate was one of them.
Yeah,
That's the one I think.
that's
Okay,
what you soulmate. That was Prime, and then Escaping Twin Flames, that was on Netflix.
gotcha. Okay.
Um, but Elle, at the time, was on YouTube, and she did a video where she was talking about how I survived a cult. And I was like, that's interesting. And then once I started watching her video and hearing her talk about TFU, I was like, that's when
Ooh,
it was like the light bulb in my head finally switched to on. And I'm like, okay,
yeah.
that explains everything.
Oh,
And I also started watching her other videos where she was just talking about, what she believes the concept of twin flames means now to her, and also just explaining what happened to her after she left, and during her time there. And then also more and more people were starting to come out. Um, I found Anne and Katrina. They were a lesbian couple who had left the group, and then like more and more people from like that I was seeing from the so-called ascension classes,
yeah.
who used to be like they were these front runners in these classes, and then they were like the I hate to say token couple, but essentially that's what they were to the group. They
Yeah.
were like the ones that everybody had to
Poster, like
aspire.
the poster couple.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, they were the poster child for of Jeff and Shelley. Like, see, this is who else you want to be like. It's not just
Mhm.
us. We have other happy twin flame couples, and but then once they left, it was like, oh, yeah, trouble in paradise. I
Ooh.
don't know about this group. But then, um, yeah, seeing them finally talk about their experiences was such an eye opener, and it
Mhm.
was just uh that's unfortunately also when all the guilt hit as well, for realizing how many months and how much time and how much you know you energy that you ended up giving to these people because you believe so much in this thing, and realizing how much you've been manipulated at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I can't describe. God, it was infuriating. Of course, it was also extremely depressing, but also just um, still relieved to finally feel. Eventually, I was relieved, at least, to finally be out of the mindset of constantly putting myself down, blaming myself for everything. Um, feeling like I there are things about myself that are quote unquote out of alignment, and finally realizing that all of this was just a ruse, just a ruse for them to just have power and control over me, over us.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah. God.
Yeah, I think people don't talk about those, a lot of those feelings, those negative feelings when you leave high control groups or, you know, someone that has just this, undue influence on you or whatever.
Yeah.
But there is enormous guilt and shame around that, even though maybe on a logical level we know it wasn't directly our fault, like we were conned or we were led to believe or we were just straight up lied to about things. Um, there is just overwhelming shame and embarrassment and grief, like all of these crazy feelings that just kind of boil to the surface, and it's can be very confusing with what do you do with that, and how do you keep yourself from ruminating and then kind of going down that same spiral of, oh well, it's I did this to myself, like I got myself involved in this group, and then it's so multi-layered.
Yeah, very much so. Um, uh, it took some real counseling eventually to finally start to unpack everything. But also, it was a kind of wake up call to not, because Pat continuously like shoved down my feelings, because we
Mhm.
were encouraged to do that in the group, just shove down what you're feeling, ignore what you're feeling, and to, even though everything hurt, there was all the guilt and all the shame and all the anger and all of that was still important to feel, because otherwise I never would have been able to kind of move through all those emotions. I had to learn how to finally move through all of those, because going months and months and months believing that I had to just shove everything down and just um, focus on the positive and focus on, being high vibrational, and not letting blocks get to me and all this stuff. Like, I had to sort through um, and figure out what emotions were things that I felt were natural to me, and what I and what, but also what beliefs and ideals and things that I felt were authentic to who I am. I had to sort through that, and then weed out the things that I felt like the group had implanted into me.
Mm, wow.
Well,
Complicated.
yeah, sorting out the beliefs is probably
Yeah.
the hardest part, trying to figure out, okay, who it's like it's like almost finding yourself again. You have to kind of
Mhm.
find yourself, who you are again, who and what is it that you believe in, after you are just brainwashed for so long, because they want you to lose yourself. That's the whole point. They want
Mhm.
you to lose yourself, and now it's like you're back at square one, trying to find yourself again after everything, and it is a very, very long and grueling and heart wrenching process. But I
It's not fun. Yeah,
no,
the healing shit is not to be cliche, but it's not for the weak. And then also the other layers of just like being a woman in like a patriarchal society and having to repress so much and bury so much and change who you are, and being a black woman, I imagine it has comes with its own, things outside of that that I don't even understand on a deep level. And then you have these types of mindsets layered on top of that, and then it's just like repression, 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 repression.
Yeah.
That's so much work to just like try to take, I just hit my chin on that, layer after layer after layer off of each other to go back and find out who am I, who am I actually,
Yeah.
without everyone else's input or everyone else's bias or opinion of who they want me to be or who they're comfortable with me being.
Yeah. It, uh, I was actually really grateful to Drea, who was somebody else who left the group. It was first Elle. I got in contact with her, and then I started following Drea on YouTube as well. Once she eventually left the
Was
cult.
she in the documentary too? You'll have to remind me. It's been a while since I've
Yeah,
watched.
she was in. She was also in Escaping Twin Flames. She was in the Netflix one.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I was actually really pleasantly surprised to see her having left. She's another Black woman, and she's someone who Jeff tried to say, oh God, uh, she's someone
Say it.
that Jeff tried to victimize with the whole "you're the wrong gender" thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, that fortunately I um, got to avoid them trying to put me with somebody else in the group. But I did remember uh, one of the so-called ascension classes where Jeff was trying to convince a woman that she's not um, masculine at all. She's feminine. She's completely 100% divine feminine, and that's who you are. That's your gender. And it was the strangest thing to watch, watching him tell this poor woman that she has no masculine energy, that she's supposed to be a divine feminine. She's supposed to be completely feminine. And just the way that he was able to just use his words alone to just manipulate her into believing
Mm.
what he was saying, and that she absolutely had no right to question him, because why would you question quote unquote God?
Right.
And yeah, he did this to not just her but so many different people. He Jeff would insist that he um, knew better than them. He knew them more than they knew themselves, and that he knew exactly what gender they were supposed to be, and that he knew what role they were supposed to fill within the twin flame union or whatever. And
Which supposedly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, number one, Twin Flames universe is primarily an online group slash cult.
yeah,
And so there's no possible way he could know someone better than they know themselves when he hasn't even met the majority of these people in person.
exactly. The it is probably the most sinister thing about the whole group, how they're able to manipulate so many women into um, believing that their twin flame is in the group because they're in alignment. But then not only
Mm-hmm.
that, on top of that, it's manipulating people into believing that they are um, a completely different gender than how they identify. Because if you're in the group, he's absolutely has more power over them than someone who is
Yeah.
outside the group and saying, "No, I'm this. You don't know me. I am who I am." But yeah, it's all about power and control. That
Mm-hmm.
essentially that's their MO for all of this: power and control, and realizing that they lose that once people start to question why they're not getting into quote unquote
Right.
harmonious union.
Right. Like I'm doing everything right. I'm buying all of the courses. I'm now an alignment coach myself or whatever. And I'm still not matched with who I think my twin flame is,
Yeah,
then it starts to look bad. And he can't control that.
exactly. And then not to mention things like what he did with Elle, which and others, way too many others like her, which was to insist that If it's somebody outside the group, you need to be pursuing your twin flame no
Ooh,
matter what. Um,
yeah.
and then honestly, when she started to open up about her story more and to explain how she was uh, eventually experiencing legal trouble, experiencing being incarcerated and stuff like that because of all of this. You have to pursue your twin flame. You're not meant to be with anybody else. You have to pursue them at all costs. And like you said in your video, I really appreciate you touching on the whole ignoring consent part, because
Mhm.
so much of what um, was taught in the group was that, you know if this is your person, you have to pursue them no matter what. There was so much emphasis on completely ignoring consent with people because, um, it's like the law of man didn't matter. The law of God matters more. And
Right.
that so
Right.
reminded me of growing up Christian as well, because it was a lot of that.
Yeah.
God's law above all else. And so if it doesn't matter if, you know, it's something that somebody doesn't agree to, that somebody doesn't consent to, you still have to pursue them because um, it's your relation. Your twin flame is your relationship to God. You have to pursue them. You don't take no for an answer. This is your person.
Don't let a restraining order get in the way of you and your twin flame, which is, if I remember correctly, again, it's how Elle ended up in legal trouble is because a lot of what Jeff and Shalia push is go after your twin flame no matter the cost. Don't let any obstacle get in your way, including police, consent, restraining orders, and you are to like keep pursuing these people and ignore all of those legal, like literal legal things between you and this person. it,
Yeah,
that's not there. That's fake news. Just ignore
exactly.
all that and just keep going for it.
Yeah,
And
it's like
but then he won't take responsibility when bad shit happens.
not at all, ever. It's if you got yourself in trouble, then cue the mirror exercise.
Yep.
You are the one who's blocking yourself if you're pursuing your twin flame, and you're blocked on social media. That's a block. You're blocking yourself. Your twin flame files a restraining order. Why are you restraining yourself?
Yeah, yeah.
Just
It's
so,
crazy.
yeah.
You're
It
just gaslighting yourself the whole time. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So you're getting gaslit by all these people in the group above, quote unquote, above you in rank,
Yeah.
but then just the self gaslighting that is taught.
It's
And
a,
like you said, and you and I were talking about the other day, like it's interesting the pipeline from this super Christian upbringing into more of this new age spiritualism, and how a lot of those underlying structures are exactly the same, of no questioning authority, of just a radical commitment to this belief or this ideology to a dangerous fanatical level,
yeah.
but then no responsibility is taken by the people like pressuring you to do it or gaslighting you into doing it or shaming you if you don't. Like Jeff, there's recordings of him literally calling people a twin flame's pussy if they don't pursue their twin flame beyond whatever, that person blocking them or a restraining order being in place. That's wild. That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Exactly. I God, um, I think that's why these groups, these cults, essentially, the reason why they work so well is because they are taking things from other belief systems that are, have been proven to be
Mm-hmm.
able to get people to listen to you and to not question your authority and to just, you know, go along with what you're, whatever it is that you're preaching. They know it works. That's and oh God, I hate to call him clever, but essentially he's been very, very cunning about it. Both him and
Cunning's
Shalia.
a good word.
Yeah,
Cunning is a perfect word for him.
very, very cunning, conniving. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but
Sleazy, like you said, sleazy and slimy.
exactly. I was just saying, like, to this day, it doesn't surprise me that there's so much evidence mounting up against them, and they were still going to fight tooth and nail to say, no, we're right, you're wrong, you're all wrong, and instead of course, never. Oh, the irony of telling people to do the mirror exercise when you can't even do it for yourself and realize that you know that you can't see past your own narcissism, dude. Like,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, just, oh, the
And
irony.
both of them just reek of malignant narcissism,
Yeah,
and they just feed off of each other. And also, I think this goes hand in hand with, what a true narcissist acts like or how they are. But they're, I feel like on a very deep level, they're very insecure.
exactly.
Is like that to me is very obvious, very palpable with each of them in their own ways. Jeff is more outgoing and just like in your face about it, and
Yeah.
then Shalia is a little bit more quiet or reserved, at least on camera. But having a mom who was very conniving and a narcissist like that, it's easy for people like us who have been in relationships or have family like that to pick those things out, or something maybe just doesn't feel right. Like, you're like, I've seen that behavior before. I've seen whatever that is. I can't put my finger on it, but that feels familiar to me, and it's something's not right about it.
You know what? You brought up a really good point. I also have narcissistic family members, and because for me, because I was kind of raised around people like this, um, at first for a very long time I didn't understand what narcissism was, and so I just knew um, when things didn't feel right. But I also, at the same time, growing up with people like this who raise you and stuff like that, you're taught to question yourself. You're taught that you're wrong anyway. You're taught, and
Yes.
because of
So
that,
true.
because of being raised like that, I think I was even more susceptible to um, this type of cult specifically, where somebody is telling you that you're in the wrong. I'm the authority figure. I know what's best for you. I had gotten I grew up with that. I was so used to hearing
Mhm.
that, to the point where it felt like second nature to just, okay, just go
Yep.
along.
Gosh,
you
so
know
true.
I don't know best. Maybe I don't know best. And I when you're raised to not trust your own instincts, it really does make you much more susceptible to falling
Yeah.
for everything from an abusive relationship to a situation like this, where you've got you know people scamming you,
Mhm.
and then calling it progress or calling it healing.
Right.
And it's
Yeah, because 'cause they're like, why are you questioning me? You're the one that's not matched with your twin, and here I am. I've done all of this. Look how successful I am at this concept. Why why the hell would you question me, the expert?
yeah,
But that's a really uh, prominent feature among many controlling groups and cults is, and relationships, like you mentioned, is the inability to ask questions or to challenge leadership on beliefs. If it's true, if it's valid, if your belief and your system, whatever it is valid and true, it can hold up to the scrutiny and the questions.
exactly.
But they don't want the questions and scrutiny because they know that it will crumble when you start poking holes in their philosophy or their whatever belief they have set up that they want you to fall for.
Exactly. I think that's why there was so much of an emphasis on, if you question it, it's a block.
Mhm.
It's a block. You're blocking your own ascension. You're blocking your own um, higher self. You're blocking yourself on your twin flame journey
Mhm.
by questioning things. How very convenient,
Yeah.
that you are unable to do all this stuff without it being a block. So much emphasis on that because they truly wanted us to be reliant on these authority figures. And
Mhm.
go figure, you call yourself spiritual, and yet you've got, how many freaking luxury cars and all of this stuff,
I
and
was
it's like,
just thinking that.
you
I was
just
just thinking that. Yep. They have, like, so much money. I think the Twin Flames universe is, like, worth over 5 million at this point. And then, yeah, they have, like, all these luxury cars and, like, this almost $1 million home. Um, and then if there's people in their group, I've seen the videos, and you might have actual experience of this or hearing it, but it's like if you don't have the money to buy these courses or whatever next step they want you to do, then it's, well, you have, what is it, a poverty mindset,
yeah.
and you're blocking your own abundance,
Oh
and
my
that's
god.
on you.
Yeah. My coach used to tell me that. Oh
No.
yeah. she uh I used to, like, before I bought that first ascension class, I kept saying, I don't have money for this, because back then I was
Yeah.
in college and I was like, I don't have money for this. This is insane. Like how am I supposed to pay for it? And she was like, well, you're gonna have to get out of that poverty mindset, and as well, and she said, just embrace unconditional love. Realize that the universe truly wants you to find alignment. And as long as you are focusing on that and not letting that be a block, then you will be able to manifest enough money. Just rely on the universe to manifest enough.
Right. It's like spend the money now and then just trust in your own ability to manifest
Yeah,
that and more back.
trust in the
So
universe.
again, yeah, for real.
Because yeah, you'll be able.
Again,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Ah,
I keep,
you're good. You're good. Go
I
ahead. Go
think
ahead.
there's a delay again. There's like just a slightest delay. So we keep,
Oh, sorry. I got you. I got you.
but it's all good. But yeah, again, they take like the smallest concept of, I think the concept of maybe what you put out comes back, right? Like if you're nice to people, chances are they're going to be nice to you. Or if you're nasty to people, they're probably going to be a little bit nasty back. That's a pretty easy to understand concept. And it's typically correct, in my experience. But then they take that and just put it into every aspect, like wealth and abundance and relationships and whatever. But they just package and market it towards people as growth and self-help and your higher, creating this higher self, but decreasing you, diminishing you every step of the way.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
God.
Uh, it's that's honestly, it's not just TFU. It's so many people in the spiritual community are the exact same way. Which is why for a long time I just kind of stepped away from all of it entirely, because I kept seeing the same type of thing. You if you're not in alignment, if you're not you know, getting out of this mindset, or if you're not choosing to stay positive or do those type of things, like this, you end up manifesting bad things. You manifest
Yeah.
this, it's like, and that also reminds me a lot of law of attraction, which I don't, the TFU didn't really bring this up too much, but essentially, it's the idea that you are what you attract, which is
Mm-hmm.
more also a lot of that mirroring thing,
Yep.
the whole mirroring exercise. And they're telling you that if you know you're attacked or you're abused or you're belittled or you're treated badly, it's because you manifested that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like, no, it's you. None of us manifest trauma. Trauma
Right.
and trauma never happens for a good reason. It happens. If it happens for a reason, it's not always a good one. It just happens because people um, choose to do evil to each other. That's essentially
Ooh,
what it is. And
I got goosebumps. That's so true. So true.
essentially,
There's shitty people. There's shitty people in the world, and shitty people are going to do shitty things.
yeah,
And there's no reason for it other than they're shitty people doing shitty things. And no realistic, healthy world should we take that on ourselves or make other people take it upon themselves to absorb that as their own doing?
Yeah, exactly. I, in hindsight, realizing just how incredibly heinous it is to tell somebody that they that they're responsible for, especially for their own childhood trauma,
Yeah,
is
that's
like,
wild.
that's one of the most disgusting things that you can do to somebody, because it's like you you are at that, especially as a child, you are not responsible for the way other people treat you.
Mhm.
You should be protected as a child, you should be defended, you should be loved. And if you get anything other than what you deserve as a child, any of those things, then that is not on you. That is on the people who should have been giving you love and giving you safety and all of that. They failed, not you.
Absolutely. God, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And um, we don't hear that enough. And we're especially not going to hear it. No one's going to hear it from an organization who doesn't even have qualified trauma informed therapists.
Yeah.
And so if you go into these groups, like I know you and I have separately into different groups or, communities, um, not having previously had a good therapist to kind of teach us these things or teach us how to trust ourselves or what to look out for, then we don't know that until we hopefully when we get out of those types of situations and we actually do find a good therapist or have access to a therapist and can do that. Then it's like, oh shit. And then you feel, then there's the kind of that spiral again of the shame and guilt. Like, this, how did I not see this? Like, was I stupid? Like, was I blind? Why it's so glaringly obvious after the fact. But when you're in that haze, you're not going to see it. Like, it's you're not going to see clearly. Everything is a little bit cloudy. And like I said in that other Twin Flames video that I did, people don't join cults. They join communities. They're looking for like-minded people. They're looking for acceptance. And a lot of us are coming from families where we don't have that acceptance anyway. And so when we find a group like this or a community, and one in a spiritual community that seems pretty harmless on the surface, it's just trying to find love, essentially. That's what it is at the end of the day. It's trying to find someone who loves and accepts you romantically. Then, like, obviously this seems great on the surface. Why would we not be drawn to that? It's just human nature, and
Yeah,
they're just preying on human nature.
exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. They are preying on stuff that we that everybody essentially wants to have. They're preying on people's um they're preying on people's hearts. They're preying on people's minds. They are preying on our need for companionship
Mm,
and for
mhm.
acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's extremely easy to um, people. I think people don't give credit to how easy it is to um, be swept up into that when you've been denied that for so long.
Yeah.
That acceptance, um, even self, whether it's acceptance from the community around you, acceptance from family, and um, so if you haven't had those things, then you absolutely aren't going to accept yourself.
Yeah.
And then you go into a place like that, and then all of a sudden it's like there's acceptance. There's
Yeah.
people who want to, who seem like they care about me. They actually
Mhm.
want me to be successful. They actually want me to find love. They actually want to be there for me. And then that's so once they start putting stipulations on that, it suddenly becomes transactional. Then you're like,
Mm,
but wait, what? But then by then, that's when they start to incorporate ways to make you doubt yourself.
right.
So it's like,
100%.
but by the time you start to put doubts, or by the time you start to doubt, it's like, no, this isn't our fault. It's your fault.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Weaponizing love, weaponizing community, because as humans, we're designed to be part of a community. We're designed to work together and to have that companionship, not just romantically, but with other people as a whole. And yeah, like you said, they're just they're weaponizing it and using it against people in just a really vicious conning, conniving sort of way.
It's only a matter of time, I feel like, before well, they're already being exposed now, but
Mhm.
um honestly, I'm hoping eventually more legal consequences come up for those two, because
Yeah.
just there's only so much shady shit you can do for so long before it finally starts to catch up with you. And in this case, it's like more and more people, the more self-aware people actually become, real self-awareness, that's um, probably the easiest way to break out of a cycle like that. Becoming
Yeah.
self-aware and really knowing yourself. The more you know yourself, the harder it is for you to fall prey to people like that.
Mhm.
That's what they're counting on. The less you know and trust yourself, the easier you are to be manipulated by people like this.
Yeah.
So that was probably my number one um, like assignment for myself once I left, was to say, okay, you know what, I need to sort through all of this, and I need to just take some time and figure out who the heck am I, like I say. and
Mhm.
and I'm I'm at a point now, finally, since 2019, all these years later, I'm like, okay, I finally know who I am now, and now I can see the patterns and see all these red flags. And the thing is, now that I see what the pattern is, it's insane to me just how prevalent it is within
Yeah.
communities like this. And you see it over and over again, and like, wow,
Mhm.
just how truly pervasive a lot of this stuff is. And groups like this are all over the place. This one in particular was really sinister, with how they were able to get people to stay for as long as they have, and the fact that they are still gaining followers after all this
Yeah.
time, and even after being exposed. It's like this. Ugh, that's probably the most frustrating part, honestly. But I that's why I'm really grateful for people like Elle, and people like Drea, and people like Anne and Katrina, um, and even people like Keely, who finally I was really surprised to see that she had left, but I think eventually she even started to see the patterns finally, and to break out of that. But um,
Mm.
for
And you, people like you too.
people like me, even after everything, I still consider myself relatively fortunate to not have lost as much financially as others did. Um, if I had stayed, then I would have, you know, yeah, I would have ended up losing that 1,500.
Mhm.
And on top of that, I would have, because I only paid $100 for the initial like qualifier for map. And then I ended up paying another 200 total for the ascension classes.
Mhm.
Um, and then coaching with my so-called coach as well. So I only lost a few hundred compared to people who lost and are still losing thousands and thousands of dollars to these people. Um, but just so yeah, I didn't um, that part didn't hurt too much. The financial part, but personally. But then I go back and I look at how much people are spending. I'm like, yeah,
It's insane.
it's in
Insane.
it really is insane. And then of course they make it seem so tempting, because you can just manifest enough money to deal with it,
Mhm.
um, or get you to a place at least where you're complacent enough to where, you know, you're thinking you're fine without the money, when really if you're in a place where you're struggling. It's like they try to get you to a place where, even if you are struggling to make ends meet, where you're struggling in your personal life to be able to afford anything else, as long as you're still paying for classes, that's all that matters. You're
Yeah.
still going to get into alignment by doing this, and the universe will reward you, even if you're, in a financial crisis. You're going to be rewarded in the end. So it just insane, absolutely insane. But like now, again, in hindsight, I realize that now. But um, just how quickly I was able to kind of fall into thinking it was normal to pay, $100 a month for essentially to listen to Jeff manipulate and verbally abuse people, because that's essentially what was going on during
Hmm.
classes. Uh, just and I keep saying Jeff, but honestly, Megan slash Shelia was in on it as well. She was involved in a lot of those, and just
Yeah, it's like lethal levels of toxicity with those two. But I think it'd be interesting to do either something for the Patreon community, like a Q&A with you, or even YouTube live maybe on Q&A on some of those specific things like we saw in the documentaries. And I like hearing from someone who was actually in it. And that's one of the things I would ask is like, how does Jeff behave? Like in the documentaries, you see him like lashing out and yelling and screaming and cussing people out. Was that what it was like? So I think there's all of these different things I'm curious about, but and I'm
he.
sure a lot of people are curious about.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind answering that. Truth be told, I feel like I feel like that's something any of us who left, like we all kind of, we all know the behavior all too well, because it was just every single thing. It was just like it was like paying to watch somebody bully somebody else. Essentially, you're paying to watch somebody be bullied.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Ooh, I hate that.
yeah, it's just very much
Ugh.
like a middle school bully who just is picking on all the kids that he sees as weaker than him,
Hmm.
because like you said, like absolutely insecure.
Yeah.
I remember one time he was talking, him and Shelly were talking to each other, and out of nowhere they just said, I would die without you. I would die without you. I would die without my twin flame. And it was like, yeah, I would die without you too. And I'm like, uh, oh, okay.
Okay, then go do it. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. Bye. Sorry. Sorry,
No,
not sorry.
I mean, yeah, at this point, if those two met a demise, I don't think, very many
Not
people,
many feelings would be hurt.
yeah, not many feelings would be hurt. Not many people would cry for them at this point, because yeah, yeah,
It's
uh,
yucky. It's really yucky behavior. It's
very much.
gross. And they have a kid now, but I won't get into that part. Um, but yeah, I know towards the end of the documentary they had also talked, and again, I think maybe this is something we can talk about maybe at a later time if you ever want to do that. But in the end of the documentary, they talked about getting a compound, like buying land for a compound. So a lot of these, since it is an online community cult, buying a compound would allow people to come stay there, which I do know that through that documentary as well. They already had some people living in their house and basically being their little workers and doing all of their, quote unquote bitch work
Yeah,
as part of like not internship, but almost like they're lucky to live with them and be under their guidance and whatever. It's how do people think it's not a cult at this point? I
yeah,
mean, there's no one way any cult looks, but there's a lot of ways cults act, and Twin Flames universe is mirroring all of those behaviors.
exactly. Speaking of mirroring,
Exactly.
that's terrifying. The thought is terrifying, but unfortunately, it was only a matter of time before they got to this point, and then because they already have a
Yeah.
church, they've already tried to reach
Yep.
tax exempt status, so it was only a matter of time before they started to say, okay, let's take it even further and let's create our own compound, our own twin flame, our in person twin flame universe.
Yeah,
Essentially.
exactly. Yeah, and people are easier to control that way.
Look at what they've done to people just via online, via,
Mhm.
just having that contact.
Yeah.
The level of manipulation in person.
Ooh. So, yeah, I think we need to keep our eyes on these people in this group because I don't want it turning into another Waco, Texas type of thing or, Nexium
Um,
thing. Yep. Jim Jones, Jonestown. Like, we look in the rear view and we look at these past cults and we're like, well, how could people do this? Like, the signs are so clear. How do people not know this was a cult? How are people manipulated in this giant way? How are so many people manipulated? Well, we're seeing it right here. We're seeing in real time how that's possible.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. I'm like, it's so incredibly easy to judge from afar, and I did this before I joined, but then now I look back, I realize how a lot of it is how just prevalent a lot of the beliefs that they ended up taking and warping are.
Mhm.
They're working off of that. They're working off of people's insecurities, off of or people's need for connection, like human nature, like you were saying, or they're also just going off of beliefs that you know that religion has taught, that society as a society we're taught different things that and all of that. They're taking all of that and combining it and you know coming up with really cunning and
Mhm.
sinister ways to make it all kind of come together so that it seems like they legit want to help people, that they legit want to build a community. Without that self-awareness, it's really hard to understand just how quickly people can fall into that trap of feeling secure in a place like that, in a group
Yeah.
like that. People who don't understand human behavior are usually the ones who are so quick to victim blame and say people deserved what they got. And
Mhm.
you guys don't understand human behavior. If you did, then you would understand just um, how quickly you can fall prey to people who are cunning enough to use all of these techniques against people. Uh, Finding people like Elle and Drea and the others who
Mm.
left and talking about what they went through, having the bravery to do that, I really appreciate them doing that because that is what inspired me to finally um, put aside the guilt, put aside the shame, and to say, you know what, I went through this thing. I went
Yep.
through this thing, and it is what it is. I Talking about it um, can only help. You
Yeah.
know, instead of pretending like it didn't happen.
Right.
That only
Well,
has a.
I'm proud of you. And I'm glad you decided to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for listening to Lia's story and supporting her journey through this channel. If you enjoyed this video and you want to support the content we do here, you can join my Patreon, buy some cool merch, or even just leave a nice comment below. Go check out my Twin Flames deep dive next, and you'll find more interviews like this right here on the Culture Shock podcast.